to this afternoon's, or one of this afternoon's Spring Festival sessions that I'm running, and I'm going to be talking a little bit about tools for language teaching, and specifically really around how we choose them. But first of all, who are we? Well, we're EuroCALL, with the European Association for Computer Assisted Language Learning. And you can see some of our details there on social media. If you're not already a member, please become a member. We need you to share your expertise, and we need you to help keep our organization providing the support that we believe and understand is so important these days in a time of rapidly developing technology. So we focus specifically on computer assisted language learning through many, many diverse special interest groups, including multimedia use, including, of course, corpus and more sort of traditional, if you like, language learning special interest groups. And this year we have our annual conference coming to you from Iceland. So I do hope you'll be able to join us there. So I'm just going to swap. There we are. Let's just stop my sharing and start a different screen. And I'm going to focus specifically on tool choice for language teaching and learning. And perhaps then we could start in the chat, and I could ask you, so welcome everybody. I could ask you, the last time you were looking for a tool, and I'm talking about a digital tool in this case, maybe a website, maybe an app, to do something for your professional language teaching or learning, where was your source of information? How did you find that tool, or what persuaded you to use that particular tool that you ended up choosing? So perhaps you could just share that in the chat and we can have a little think about that. And find out a little bit more about the tools that you use and where you get your information. So perhaps it was a conversation at work, perhaps it was a particular association or group of people. We're quite heavily swayed here towards Manchester Met, so I'm sure I know one of your sources of inspiration is here with you in the room. Oh, great. Okay. Good. Right. So already we're finding that actually word of mouth is very important. Connections are very important. It's not what you know, sometimes it's who you know. Yeah. So you're asking each other. And as we know, a lot of the work that we do these days is done at pace. Oh yes, Cornelia, I remember hot potatoes and updates until you found learning apps. Great. Okay. So yeah, so we perhaps people, but also Google by the looks of it. Also students, that's interesting, isn't it? That's something that's sort of changed, and perhaps we're more comfortable with that now. Yes, and yes, you could even ask ChatGPT. So even your artificial intelligence could provide you with just what you're looking for. But don't forget, it could also invent it if it doesn't exist, because that's what it does. So I'm just going to share my screen and let's have a little think. Yes, please do carry on by putting your chats in, your comments in the chat. We're quite a small group, so it's going to be easy enough to, there we go, going to be easy enough to chat together. Right. Okay. So what I'm going to be thinking of specifically really is, sorry for jumping about there, what I'm going to be thinking about specifically is how we evaluate and how we collect together the best tools for language teaching and learning. And we've talked already about how important it is to connect with each other. I think these days as well, we have to reflect on the fact that the technology is changing so rapidly that no one person is going to have the answers to everything. And I think if I were to reflect on the conversations that we've heard this morning, it's quite clear that for many people, they feel that it's actually a constant process of re-evaluating and checking and things changing. And so our networks are, and our trust networks are probably more important than ever. And one of the things that I decided to do, and largely this evolved from the work that I do with an organisation called EuroCALL, and EuroCALL work on virtual exchange, was to look at how I curate the information I have and how I share it and how I build that network in order to make sure that I can keep abreast of what's going on. So here's this comes from a Twitter colleague of mine, Sue Beckingham. This was a visual to sort of help us better understand what's going on now in terms of how we teach, because how we teach has changed quite a lot. So, for example, our modes of learning have been totally changed, as we know, by the pandemic. So we started off with essentially pre-pandemic language teaching largely taking place in person, in rooms and physical places that we understand as classrooms. And with some of us, those of us and like Carmen and those of you at MMU, experimenting and trying out some of the online technologies in order to look at how we can work in a hybrid way and perhaps provide additional resources beyond the classroom, and maybe doing some blended teaching, perhaps using a Moodle or using a virtual learning environment for students so they can work between sessions. And that's been a sort of gradual process, but the pandemic really shook that up. And then suddenly we find ourselves in a situation where we have to be able to teach in lots of different ways, lots of different contexts. And therefore, for some people, that meant a really rapid learning curve in terms of finding out about technologies, what works for you in your context. And also, I think this is something that's actually been there for a long, long time, understanding that, in fact, self-directed learning, hertagogy as we sometimes think of it, is more important than we've traditionally perhaps come to expect. So resources such as the multimedia resources that we've been hearing about just now from Flame and Filter show us that learners can be very self-directed in terms of what they wish to do and what they want to be engaged in. And that is an opportunity for us as language educators to support their learning and perhaps allow them to move more at their own pace. So how we're teaching has changed hugely and developed hugely largely as a result of the pandemic. But these changes have also brought with them a great deal of complexity, because clearly once we move into the digital realm, life is not quite the same as it was in our classrooms. We've got the legal framework for what we do sort of lagging behind, because there was very little real understanding of copyright and understanding of ownership in the digital sphere. So copyright became more of an issue. Our movement through the digital realm leaves footprints, and sometimes we think of them as digital tattoos more than a footprint. A footprint at least fades, but your footprints in the digital realm don't fade. They don't always go away, and they can become a problem. So protection of our privacy also becomes something that we have to think about. So those letters there, GDPR, those of us working in a European context will be well aware of the importance of understanding the protection of privacy online, particularly if you're working with young people, if you're working with under 18s who can't necessarily consent in terms of sharing their information online, and can be manipulated. So it's very important that we as practitioners can model good practice in terms of how we work, and help them understand the digital domain with greater depth. So as I mentioned just now as well, we have to understand ownership. So that may mean understanding licensing. So again, typically, if this isn't an area that you're familiar with, and I will share some links that will help, if you're not familiar with copyright clearly was based upon the idea that information could be protected because it was in some sort of written down format, a hard copy, if you like. So your identity as an author was protected by copyright, because there was your book and there was your name, and anything that anybody copied or plagiarized from that would be instantly identifiable. Well, in the digital domain, because of the ease of copying and the ease of sharing, those areas became more blurred, those lines became more blurred, and Creative Commons licenses are a way of helping to solve some of that problem. If we think of copyright applies automatically as soon as you publish anything, and of course publishing is something that's now very easy online. So once you publish something, and it could just be a picture, and you put that online and you share it, you claim ownership of that image just by the simple act of publishing it. Well, it may be that you're quite happy to do that, and you're quite happy to make that image publicly available. But equally, it could be that that image is something you've copied from somewhere else that actually belongs to someone else, and they don't want it used in that way. So what Creative Commons offers to us is a way of actually expressing what it is we're sharing and how we wish to share it. So as I say, more links on that shortly. And finally, another headache as well is the how easy it is to access. We tend to assume that if we put things online, anybody can see them. But of course, when it comes to it, people with, for example, visual handicaps or visual disabilities may find that the content that we've made available is inaccessible. I'm very aware that I've shared screenshots today during the presentations through Twitter. Now, what I should do, best practice really, would tell me that I would add alt text to those screenshots. And because I'm working very quickly, I haven't done that. So I feel a bit guilty about that, I must admit, but alt text is very important for those people using screen readers. They really need to have access to understand what you've been sharing and where and what it means, what that picture means, and to do it in a meaningful way. And that brings another set of headaches with it. So it's not a straightforward thing to do. But what we're talking about really is so important. It's important because we need, particularly these days, to focus on ethics and ethical behaviour. And that's because what we're trying to do is to model. We're trying to model the best way of doing things, the fairest way of doing things. As practitioners, that's important to us. We wouldn't be teachers otherwise. So that ethical dimension means that we do have to deal with some quite thorny, quite tricky aspects of behaviour online, and we have to model good ways of getting through that. And it's such a delight to hear from Carmen just now how Creative Commons licensing and understanding of ownership is being advocated and explained to her students and the people that she's working with. And there's an element of cost in this. This isn't just about financial cost, but it's also an element of time. It will increase the amount of time that you have to spend thinking things through before you do things. And that's where we make great time savings by being part of a network. So having good connections, having trusted networks is very important. It's a good way of saving us time. especially when we're in this particular realm where we're trying to work both synchronously and asynchronously, where we're trying to get a balance in our teaching and trying to be as effective as we can as we work. So let me just stop sharing for a second, because I've got some links I'm going to pop into the chat for you, and I don't want to bother you with jumping in and out of documents.
Hey, Teresa, we've lost visual of you again.
Oh yes, I switched off my.
That's okay, as long as,
as
long as it was intentional. I just wanted to check.
Yes, it is.
That's
yeah,
okay.
I'm still here.
That's okay.
And I'm just going to scan through the chat while I'm here. So yeah. Good. Okay, thank you. Cornelia as well. Yes, let's not forget EuroCALL, as a EuroCALL publication, has lots and lots of news about new tools, a good trusted research informed network to be part of. So I'm going to just share with you a couple of links that will help, I hope, people find better information. So here's the first one I'm going to share, and this really is a curation. So this is a curation on Wakelet that I do, and this one is specifically, sorry, I've sent that just to Tony, let's just send that to everybody. So this is very much a way of picking up and collecting some of the ephemera, if you like, that particularly flies through Twitter. And if you're not a Twitter user, then you possibly never ever come upon it. So what I try and do is to curate that, and if you take a flick through it, you'll be able to see very quickly just what is going on in the world of Twitter and elsewhere where people are sharing information. And it's specifically really around how important it is to maintain a critical lens when we're choosing tools. And I think you'll see lots and lots of messages there around exactly that. Now, the next link I'm going to share with you, here we go, and you'll be able to take these away because you can take the chat away at the end of the session, is all around the use of copyright and how actually copyright underlies the use of Creative Commons licensing. So these are little presentations that I put together when I did my Creative Commons training. Creative Commons, the organization, runs training for both librarians and for a separate section for practitioners. I would really recommend it. The training is excellent. It's very practical. It's not dry at all. I expected it to be very much informational, but it's very much about creation. So as a result of participating in that, as in my journey, if you like, of learning how to use Creative Commons licenses, I had to create communicating what I'd learnt. So I think there's lots of great resources there to share with you. So I'm going to come back to my presentation. And please do feel free to interrupt and to ask questions in the chat. You're very welcome. So what we're trying to do, and here I'm going to sort of refer back to the work I mentioned earlier with the organisation EuroCALL, which was kind of a spin-off from EuroCALL. It actually sort of arose from the CMC special interest group some years ago in EuroCALL, where we were looking at computer-mediated communication. So EuroCALL is a not-for-profit organisation, and what we do is help universities connect together and devise and conduct virtual exchange that is global, that connects across cultures, it connects across disciplines, so it's interdisciplinary, it is national, and what we do is to try and create comfortable online spaces, which often means pulling together a variety of tools in order to create effective collaboration with these groups. So you will find us if you simply Google uni collaboration. You'll find us, and you'll see some examples there of some of the projects that we do that connect all sorts of seemingly unlikely disciplines or unusual connections across the world, and sometimes with some very powerful results in terms of bringing people together and helping to close the psychological distance between cultures. And that's what uni collaboration does. We try and provide the understanding and the wherewithal needed in order to make effective decisions in terms of tool choice that will work for your project. So it's not just about information exchange, it's actually much deeper than that. What we're trying to do is to create comfortable online environments where people can connect and understand each other better. And together they can produce more informed and hopefully world-saving collaborations. So it does very much have a social justice element to it. And it's really the work that I've done for uni collaboration that has helped me take a closer understanding of the importance of critical digital literacies. So here's another network I'm going to mention. I will show you this one here, but these are some of my reflections really on that journey, if you like, that I can feed back to the Spring Festival today. So we're seeing a very rapid and demanding pace of technological innovation and change going on. And we've seen that perhaps for the last 10 years or so, very challenging. And I know, having been a language educator for 30 years, that language education is very challenging. So how on earth do we help people to get through all of these challenges? Well, my first tip would definitely be join trusted research-informed networks. So look at the networks that are out there, and there's more than the obvious ones that we've seen today. So yes, there's Filter and Flame. Yes, there's EuroCALL, but beyond that, there are others. And again, I will share some links. It's very important that we take a kind of as we've heard this morning, we have to get out there and try things for ourselves. We have to experiment, yeah, to really understand how something works. Yes, there's lots of critiques and people examining things from different angles, but actually the best way is to find out for yourself and to try things out for yourself. And there's another network here that I'm going to show you in just a second. I was interested, and again, this is something that Carmen said just now, in how important it is to encourage not just our colleagues, but also our students to blog. Because putting your experiences out there can help inform other people. They might not agree with you, that's fine. So, you know, maintain your own blog that's personal, and these are your own thoughts, and nobody can stop you from having your own thoughts. But through sharing those and helping people to understand your perspective, they will help to reflect on their own, this autoethnographic approach, really, that you can reflect better on your own practice through looking at the practice of others. And as we're doing today, participate in these professional conversations. And the important message there, and I'm doing it with from the image there as well, is keep those eyes open, keep looking, keep thinking, keep reflecting. So that's the end of my presentation, but I'm going to just share with you what I'm talking about when I say get savvy, because here's another one of these networks that is out there, again co-funded by Erasmus. And this was the Future Teacher Network. And what you'll see here, and in fact, this is ongoing, is that you'll see that this network has been working on making sure that we think about all these different aspects of teaching. This isn't language teaching focused, this is just teaching focused. Yeah, so generic teaching, although with an emphasis on higher education and further education, really. And from these topics, since 2018, there has been a monthly webinar, and you'll see on this particular topic, which is the digital tools topic, you'll see that there are recordings from 2018, 2021, and in the next month or so, we will have 2023. You see just how much change there's been and how we've been coping with that. And these are pulled together in an open source tool called Xerte, Xerte, Xerte. Now, that resource enables us to pull together lots of different content, so interactive content, showing you ways of assessing and critiquing tools that are out there, ways of accessing, understanding of what's going on behind the tools, and also guest speakers talking about their own experiences in very short. They have a 10-minute maximum presentation each. So you can use this little hamburger menu here to jump through the content and find things that are relevant to you, or you can just listen to the entire webinar where you'll see it all unfold before you. But here's one of the reasons why we need to keep our eyes open. So this is obviously back from one of the presentations some years ago, and Cornelia, as you can see, hot potatoes is there. Here's one of the biggest traps that we have fallen into time and time again with digital tools. They come, we create with them, we talk about them, we share them, and then they disappear. And along with their disappearance goes all the things that we've created within them. I remember early in my teaching career using Granville, using CD-ROMs to teach French. Many of these I have used and they have passed on, and I've been left to find alternatives. So that's just one of the many reasons why it's so important, in fact, for us to think critically about what really matters to our tool in terms of our tool selection. So I'm going to stop sharing again and return to your screen, because I've got some more links I want to share with you, and I want to just quickly, yes, isn't it? It is very sad, the whole loss of tools that we have over the years. It is indeed. Let me just pop some further links for you into the chat. So we have here a document link, and I think in terms of time, I'm just going to check how we're doing for time. Yeah, we're good for time. I'm going to share a document now in the chat. And just a quick look, there are 7 of us as participants, so I won't use breakout rooms because we're quite a small group. So I'm going to pop this, I'll share this in my screen first. So if you can open that in a tab on your screen, and meanwhile I will open it and share it too. So I'll talk you through it a little bit. So one of the major challenges, as I say, is that there is a plethora of tools. There are so many tools out there. And that's one of the most important reasons really why we need to talk to each other and collaborate and try things out. Within your institution, there are bound to be learning technologists and academic technologists who will have a suite of tools that has been paid for by your institution that they will want you to use. And they may fit what you want to do, and that's perfect. However, they may not. And I know Carmen has had this experience, and I certainly have, and many of us in virtual exchange have had this experience, that we are told perhaps as an institution that we need to use product X or Y, but in fact that doesn't hugely help what we're trying to achieve. So in some cases we have to make our own critically informed decisions about the tools that we use. So this document I'm showing you here is called a tool parade. I use it with Virtual Exchange when we experiment with tools and look at different tools. If I zoom to the bottom of the document, you can see that this is actually something that is built upon a list that was created and shared by Jesse Stommel. He of hybrid pedagogy fame, you may have come across. He shared it openly, but I did find that within his collection of tools, quite a lot of them were actually required licenses and payment. And unfortunately for many of us as practitioners, we don't have the money to blow on lots of expensive tools. So what I tried to do is to produce another list, and this list focuses specifically on tools that are either free or relatively cheap to use for practitioners, and may even have teacher accounts that you can use. So if you provide an email address for an institution, a teaching institution, you will get additional free content and improved access. And so that was one of my ethical decisions. Another ethical decision really sat around student agency. So again, this chimes with what Carmen was saying earlier, that it's actually very important to empower producers and not just consumers. So I'm looking at how student agency can be fostered by our choices of digital tools. And I rather like this reference there from Bell Hooks and also from Paulo Freire, that how important it is actually to make sure that we are modelling young people in order to show them how best we can pursue human inquiry with each other. So those are the sort of decisions, if you like, behind this list. There's the ethical choices. At the top of the list, if I come back to the top here, you can see a whole range of functions, affordances, if you like, functions that you may want to support or use in your teaching. So say, for example, you wanted to use video. If you click on the link here, what you can see here are some links to ways of using video that don't require expensive video editing suites, that may encourage people to share and create using Creative Commons as well. So, for example, you may have come across Lumen 5, which is a nice way of very quickly drawing content together using Creative Commons licensed music as well as imagery, and creating an export that is a video that you can then take out and use elsewhere. Flip, what used to be known as Flipgrid, you may have come across Flip as well. So these are just examples of tools that don't require huge amounts of money, that are quite quick to get started on, and may encourage your students down a particular route that may otherwise have been expensive and tricky to do. So what I'm going to do is to leave the next 10 minutes and I'm going to be monitoring the chat and ask you to open and explore that document and pop in and try out some of the tools there, and then come back and report to us either on your mic or in the chat on the tools that you found and on how they suited you. Now, this is a dynamic document. I have to say this, I mentioned how quickly technology changes and moves and we have to run around in order to catch up. So you may find that you click on a link and the link is dead. If so, pop that link into the chat so that I know, because what I do is go in and edit so that this document is permanently, continually developing and changing, so that we can make sure that we keep it as useful as possible. So is everybody clear what I'm asking you to do? Let me just check the chat. Doesn't seem to be any questions in there. So I'm going to give it now until 3 o'clock, which is just about 10 minutes. And please feel free to explore that tool parade and to use the chat and feedback on your experiences. Let me know if you found something new, if you found something you're going to try out, or perhaps you've got an idea for using something, or if you've got any feedback on the tools that you find there. What I'm going to do is the very difficult thing to do, which is to switch off my mic and observe radio silence for 10 minutes. So feel free to get yourself a drink and to flick your way through the things you've got there, the tools you've got there, and please let me have your feedback. The room, I think we've had more or less 10 minutes. And it's very quiet in the chat, I have to admit, so I'm assuming that's because you've been very, very busy with your tools document and exploration. So would anybody like to perhaps give us their feedback by turning on their mic, or if not, just pop it into the chat? What have you found out? Ah, great. Okay, good. I'm glad there's some useful tools in there for you, Carmen. Although I can't imagine there are many tools that you've not come across before, particularly in your area of expertise. But hopefully that's a document you will turn to or find useful to share with students. Anyone brave enough to turn their mic on and give us a little bit of feedback? What did you play with? What did you find? What might you use?
I was very interested in the last ones, in the networking.
Oh, good. I'm so glad you found that bit, actually, Carmen, because that's a recent addition. Right, and Cornelia, Inklewriter. Right, you are now my expert go-to person for Inklewriter. That's excellent.
I've no intention of becoming an expert. Passing this on to the students and then see what wonderful things they come up with.
Well, absolutely. That's and that would be the basis for an article, I'm sure.
Probably.
That's great. Good. Well, I hope you have found something useful there that you can try out, and you know, encourage your students to become curators or bloggers, or share their feedback. I think there's so much more we can learn by networking and connecting, as Carmen has proved in droves, that actually connecting really, it may seem like it could increase the workload, but actually it can reduce it if we can all help each other. Excellent. Good. Christina, is there anything in particular that you were looking to do or that you focused on? Oh yes, please tell me. So if you found a link that's not working, just type it into the chat, because that's one that I can.
Teresa, I just was exploring and opening. Some of them I wasn't sure about how they work, so I think I need more time. But
of course.
I was clicking the ones that, like Carmen, the ones that we are more into. And yes, I was clicking the one in Poetica just to see what it was. And I think, at least for me, it's not working, but maybe it's my computer because it's been having some trouble.
That can always happen as well. But yes, if you do find a dead link, though, please let me know.
I use a lot for my classes, the Pixabay resource.
Oh yeah, Pixabay. Yes.
They are open.
Yes.
And they are very nice pictures. You can find that.
Yes, absolutely. And I think the thing about Pixabay as well is that the fact that you've got quite starkly contrasted collections of images, some of which are commercial and you would have to pay for the rights for them, and others that are either CC0 or available for you to use just with attribution. And I think that's it's a really nice starting point for students, for example, making presentations. Often they haven't even thought about who owns the image that they're putting in their presentation. Where here it actually encourages you to think about that and to give credit to the person who took that fabulous photo that just captures visually what you want to communicate. So yes, I mean, the criticism that's often leveled at sort of the sharing of open imagery is that, you know, you don't know where to start, you don't know where to find it. But in fact, there are some very effective, like Pixabay, sources that make it very clear how to use those images. Flickr as well has a Creative Commons section. So, you know, if you're used to using digital images, there are many places you can find them. And clip art, of course, is, you know, the clip art that you might have in your word processing software generally is not free for you to use. And people often don't realize that actually, you know, if you start making money from your presentation, then you can't use your clip art. So there's a bit of a minefield out there, and I think you know, it can be quite disheartening sometimes for both students and staff when you're trying to get something done, that you do have to spend so much time actually looking into things like copyright. But it does need to be part of your practice, really. Excellent. Well, if there are no further queries or questions, I'm going to ask Tony to put the recording off.